Hello, I'm Dave March, the Spy Guy, and this is my weekly Friday panel. And our usual gang is traveling today, so I've brought on Warhound, and he's also invited his friend Gerodoc. Warhound is we all call ourselves Luongoists because we follow the works of Tom Luongo. Gerodoc is at work, so he'll comment when he can. So we're going to talk mainly today about Iran and what's going on in Minnesota. I was going to say Milwaukee, but I'm like, no, that's the wrong place.
Yeah, wrong place.
Yeah. So we've come to the conclusion. I had an initially bad take on Iran myself, thinking there was something else going on, but it does seem like our friends, these from the city of London, are the ones, and Israel and probably the CIA are the ones behind the recent unpleasantness in Iran. Now, I wouldn't mind seeing the Ayatollahs be torched for all their bad stuff, but this does seem to be one of their standard operating things where they go in and they do bad things, where they're trying to tussle government and get a whole bunch of people killed.
Yeah, that does seem to be the trend that we're seeing overall, especially given the fact that we're now aware of several attempts to basically bring the Shah in, which we saw during the 12-Day War, that the Shah was very much brought in to attempt a narrative control operation. As we saw with BBC, brought him out, what was it, like the first or second day of operations, they brought him out. And mind you, this is the Israeli operations in Iran, not the American operations. I think the American operations were actually a counter to that narrative, because then it was like, no, you don't get to bring your guy in here. We're determining who controls the place. And so it's really going to be an interesting scenario to see what happens now, especially because people are trying so desperately to spin up this idea that, oh, people are overthrowing the government. This is happening. There's massacres. There's this, there's that. Unfortunately for them, there's video. And now we're seeing, people climbing into body bags to pretend to be dead.
Oh, okay. I haven't been watching a lot of the Telegram channels like that, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me, especially after that incident in Ukraine, when the Russians retreated, and then the Bucha massacre. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
You have so much little regard for the Ukrainians that you think that they would have just left their dead to be on the ground for 2 days without even attempting to bury them. Like, this is really disgusting.
Well, yeah. Well, and the Bucha thing is fun for me on a personal level, because you saw the mortar impacts. You saw it, you literally on the satellite images that they were using to justify that there was a massacre, you saw the mortar impacts. And here's the thing: is you can tell the direction of a artillery hit by where the majority of the blast ends up. So you can determine the direction. And directionally speaking, those shots were coming from the Ukrainian lines. So it's like, oh, interesting. Very, very interesting. It's the same thing in Iran, across the board. There's been several attempts to attack IRGC personnel, for example. And after the IRGC locked down and fortified themselves, they stopped losing people, which then tells me that somebody's feeding information of their locations and their whereabouts to the people in the country that are doing the kinetic strikes on the IRGC, which then is indicative that you've got, one, a mole within the command structure itself, and then two, you've got somebody who is coordinating the kinetic stuff. Because it's when you lose multiple higher ranking officers, colonels, lieutenant colonels, whatnot, in rapid succession like that, that's indicative of coordination. Yeah. Very indicative. So,
I mean, in some ways, you can do that in advance with like intel work. You basically watch these guys drive home from the bases and identify them a lot. I know. Money, I believe, is joining us.
oh, money, cool.
Oh no, Michael! I thought you were traveling
Oh.
this week, Michael.
Yeah, very soon. This weekend. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
How are you doing?
Okay. So this is Michael from Geopolitics Today. Warhound and Gerodoc. Warhound is a guy David introduced me to, and we're both from the Tom Luongo School and stuff. And there's another guy, Gerodoc, who's in the back lurking and will comment when he's able to.
Okay, great.
What's up, Mike?
What are you,
Mike,
what are you
Mike,
going to talk about?
you know.
You said, what? I didn't hear you.
I made a joke about Mike. Meet Mike. My name is also Mike. So.
Hi, Mike. How are you, Mike?
Yeah, doing good. Doing good.
You're neither
Good,
one
good.
of you are from Canmore, are you?
No. I'm from the corn-fed state of Ohio, so it's a great time.
Okay, it's an old Canadian joke. There's this character. Hi, I'm Mike from Canmore. It's a character on a political comedy show.
But
Thanks for,
yeah, just
yeah. Go ahead.
well,
You're gonna get
and
something,
just to clue Mike in, we're talking principally about Iran, and then we're also going to be talking about the Minneapolis op because there's a clear connection between the two. So what we're seeing across the board is that there's an intent to overthrow the regime in Iran. There's a clear intent, and then with regards to the IRGC specifically, as soon as they locked down and they got away from being out in the open, they were safe, which then tells you again there's a mole. Somebody's feeding intelligence to the EU, which I just call it the EU at this point in time. It's like that's who we're fighting. It's Brussels, it's NATO, it's all that.
Yeah, the Euro commies. And of course, Michael has to be careful since he's living in the heart of Euro commie land. Anyways, Michael will comment when he can, I guess. We're definitely seeing that with the operations in Iran. The fact the Russians also managed to disrupt or disable Starlink. I'm going to guess that they've already used this technology over Ukraine, and they just didn't have it pre-positioned to help out Iran.
Well, so here's the thing with the Starlink stuff is that we know for a fact that across the board, Starlink is going to be used. Period. End of story. That doesn't really. You see, there's a lot of people who are drawing a conclusion that because Starlink's being used, the U.S. is the one leading this color revolution, and it's like, well, that's not the case. Because at the end of the day, when you really actually look into it and you actually think about it, it's like, but why would we be openly supporting a color revolution against a regime that we didn't even eliminate in the first place? Like we knew where Khomeini was during the 12-Day War. We had identified his position. We could have killed him at any point in time. If we didn't do it then, why would we do it now? Why does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's one of the first things. But then the second thing to really get into, and this is, I think, one of the most important aspects of the whole discussion, is how does this benefit the EU? Well, we know that they're trying to get into Iran to capture the oil and gas reserves of Iran, and the civilian government, the civil service side of Iran, which is the one that does all the deals with foreign powers, the Ayatollah and the mullahs and all those guys, they don't do all these treaties. All the treaties that are signed between Russia and Iran are between the Russian government and the civil service government. So, Chevron beat BP by 2 days going into Iran. So again, who benefits? Well, it's the EU across the board, because if they overthrow the Ayatollah and then they can overthrow the civil service and get them out of the way, then BP is able to come back into Iran, and it capitalizes Europe.
Yep.
It is what it is.
I have a question. Can I jump in here?
Sure.
It's definitely with the intent of teeing you off, Warhound Mike, for I just have to comment. So it seemed like in the last week or two, on X, there was just this bizarrely like coordinated, almost like they were reading off the same Emily's List style script. It was what was it? I think it was AOC, and then some other DNC talking heads, just a whole bunch of them. They all sort of went in on the same script of like condemning, anti-Semitism and Hamas, rhetoric and blah blah blah. It was all like it was all at once. It was very weird.
Even Fuentes.
Wait, Fuentes condemned it?
Yeah, Fuentes has come out like it has been the most blatant psychological operation I've ever seen. It is. Oh,
he's wild. That whole thing's wild, and how WAPO and New York Times has been like pimping him. Like it's like you off Charlie Kirk, and then you just push this guy out in the front. It's just it's blatant, but whatever.
Yeah, he's the definitely getting boosted in the algorithm. I've seen it. Like
it's absurd. But I guess what I'm trying to, because of course it seemed coordinated, like it was just, and the way it coincided with like, looks like Iran's going down. Like there was some writing on the wall that was seen, but what's going on behind the scenes? That's what I'm wondering about. Like, are they, the winds are blowing in a different direction clearly for a whole bunch of folks in the DNC regarding the Iran situation. And I almost think it connects a lot with money flows. Of course it connects with money flows, right? Like who's writing the checks that these people benefit from, that they need. And as we all know, the DNC is hurting for cash right now. Their cash flow has been severely stepped on. There are a lot of, like Tom Luongo likes to say, there are a lot of deep pockets with assets that they can still spend down, and they're clearly still throwing a lot of resources in there, but their cash flow is severely degraded. And I wonder what this Iran thing sort of figures into all that. Yeah,
I can give you a connection.
Mm-hmm. And I figured you could. I'm gonna mute.
Only connection you need is you see Rand Paul come out swinging about this, and then we get the spoofing data about the Senate and how much money that they have. All of these guys, every single fucking one of them is violating campaign financing law.
Yeah.
Every single one. And we now have the hard evidence to show that they are. They are all going to be paying massive penalties here soon when it comes to their campaign financing problems. And you've seen how Rand Paul is whoring himself out to every single problem that Donald Trump makes for these people. Every single one. That's all you need to look at, is look at Rand Paul. Every single problem, he comes out swinging, and it's hilarious to me. It's like, oh, you are literally the biggest whore on the block when it comes to the Congress. You are the biggest. Honestly speaking, it's hilarious from my point of view, because it's like, you would think somebody like Lindsey Graham or Nikki Haley, or not Nikki Haley. I always do that. Nancy Pelosi, and a few of the others. You think they would be worse? No, Rand Paul. Oh, the worst.
Well, that's a libertarian for you.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, no. It literally that's all you have to look at, and what you end up finding, and this is what has really driven me insane personally, because I've had so many people within my circles who, being, on the fence with the whole libertarian thing, who have fallen straight into that pit because they're like, oh my God, this, oh my God, that, oh my God, this, oh my God. And it's like, it doesn't matter what issue, they are freaking out about it in some form or fashion. And I'm like, you guys are literally just ab reacting. That's all you're doing. You're not actually looking at the full picture. You're just reacting to this one minuscule thing. And it's hilarious. I've had to beat multiple of my people upside the head with the fact that, here's the stupid stick. I'm going to hit you now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Jerry, you're absolutely correct. It is the coordination is so freaking blatant. It's unreal.
Yeah, it's obviously, well, I know I'm not on it, but the Democrats have a mailing list and they send out their message for the day, and everyone gets on the script and they just talk like that, and they all have the same talking points. We saw it after Charlie Kirk died and the both sidism, and it was really infuriating to watch it. But I was like, oh, you guys are all on the same email list. This is obvious. That's why you all sound like you're in a cult, because you are in a cult. But like, geez, like vary it up a little. But it's message control.
Michael, you want to jump in on there?
This is domestic politics. I'm curious to know what you guys think about what's going on with Greenland, and is he serious? Is he going to take Greenland? We see, like, because I'm now in Europe, so I'm more interested in what's happening overseas, and Europe is pretty divided right now about what to do with Trump. He's obviously provoking the Europeans, but this could mean that NATO is in trouble, and on another level, you've got the war in Ukraine going. That seems to be. I know that Ledge and I followed this when we were doing spaces on GT. So the Trump situation is very chaotic. That they want to go after Iran. He wants to get himself out of the Ukraine quagmire and let the Europeans hold the poop bag, so to speak, to put it crudely. And now he's sort of focused on Greenland. Well, what I think this means, and I'd like to hear it from your guys, that he's reasserting dominance over the entire Western Hemisphere. Just after what happened in Venezuela, and I think this is a sign that don't go there and stay away. The Russians and the Chinese don't even think about it. This is our turf. And I think he's serious about it. He's going to take it. I wonder what you guys think about on Greenland.
Oh, yeah, I think there's some sort of deal to be there. I'm not too sure if it will be absolutely bought out, or I don't think he's going to invade. That seems to be ridiculous. The Europeans seem to believe him, and I'm like, guys, like, he always goes for the maximalist position because he's an Arabic trader, and then he bargains down until he gets what he wants. But they always seem to be so many people are not especially in the West, are not used to having that kind of negotiation style. This is like, if you ever flipped a house before, you know exactly what Trump's doing, but all these guys never do, or in the case of some of the British guys, they lied on their forms to get a better mortgage rate or whatever. And we're just seeing that. So my guess is that I also know something about Greenland. I've heard some stuff from some of my sources inside Washington. And it looks like, remember that power outage that back in the early 2000s that blacked out the eastern seaboard?
Yep.
Apparently, according to this source, it was not a Chinese hack or something like that, which I totally didn't believe. Like, you can't wipe out the entire grid by simultaneously hacking multiple stations like that. Especially back then, the internet was nowhere near as integrated as it's today. Apparently, it had to do with some sort of solar flare or other activity.
Oh, yeah, no. Real quick, just to build it out for you. No, we've seen these kind of events previously. They're everybody knows the Carrington event back in the 1800s,
Yeah.
where telegraph wires are catching fire and other shit like that.
Yeah.
That was a massive solar flare. That was an X class X10 solar flare. Now back then the damage was minimal, because a lot of people have this idea that that big of a solar flare is going to scorch the earth and whatnot. No, that's not how our magnetic field works.
Yeah.
But then when you get to the early 2000s, and what is referred to as the magnetic pole shift, we are reaching a point where our magnetic poles are actually moving. Like the north magnetic pole is currently in Siberia. And so, like, a lot of people have had to compensate. Like, everybody's wondering, like, why have we had so many plane crashes within the past decade? It's because of the magnetic poles moving. So the magnetic poles have shifted, which is throwing off avionics and stuff like that. Well, what this is also leading to is that the lesser solar flares are able to do the damage, because the solar flare that did the damage in the early 2000s on the Eastern Seaboard was, I believe it was a level 8, X8, which is, M class, they're bad, but not too bad. X is when they start getting really bad. And it was a X8. So we're talking, good hit, but it only affected that area. The same thing happened in Spain and Portugal, where you had a solar flare, which I believe was also an 8. That hit took out the electric grid in Spain and Portugal. So that kind of stuff has been ongoing. And mind you, there's been a lot of attempt to seed the zeitgeist with all these different like narratives about Chinese hackers and Russian hackers and this hacker and that hacker. But at the end of the day, that was just meant to create a bunch of noise, so people wouldn't realize, like, oh hey, by the way, the sun is a fucking 5-year-old child and it's having a temper tantrum. So yeah, that whole situation, it was a solar flare. We have the data. The data's out there. It's just most people don't know it.
So apparently something that will help mitigate those types of flares in technology or industry. I'm not exactly too sure. My source wouldn't tell me, and I don't think he really understood. He just knows there's stuff in Greenland that can help prevent that. And that's why Trump has become so suddenly interested in Greenland and getting it. Apparently Obama knew about this, but didn't bother doing anything about it. So
I'll point this out.
There's also something I want to point out about. I'm sorry to just cut in, because I was thinking about something you said, or solar stuff and all this, the cosmos. There was an interesting interview with an advisor to Bush Senior. I think she was saying that it has to do with space, because Greenland is sort of up there, and the satellite, somehow it's easier to locate satellites, and if they set up some kind of space station in Greenland, they'll be able to monitor Chinese satellites and Russian satellites and all that. So there's a space war element to acquiring Greenland. Apparently, this is what this expert.
It would be a much better place to launch rockets from than southern Florida.
Exactly.
So,
it's closer to Russia. Exactly.
Actually, so Michael's correct in what he said about satellites. You're actually wrong in regards to launching. Closer to the equator is better.
Oh yeah, I know that's better, but I mean, like, in the sense that launching from out of Florida, because where you get constantly getting hurricanes and other weather events, versus you set up in Arizona and avoided this problem.
Well, do you actually Arizona's worse because of the lack of moisture. It actually inhibits certain launch protocols. Do you actually know where NASA has the majority of their auxiliary sites?
Isn't it New Mexico?
Nope, Alabama.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and mind you, they used to launch stuff from Alabama.
Yeah.
And there's actually talk about reactivating the auxiliary site and turning it into the main site. So just to kind of comment on So Greenland, there is a thing to do with Greenland when it comes to the solar flares and so on and so forth, but it's not what your source is kind of off a little bit. It's not that there's stuff there, it's the location itself. Because what we do know now, due to ice samples that were collected in Antarctica, there is electromagnetic radiation that's been detected deeper in the ice that we have now been able to confirm shows that it's like, okay, wait a minute, how the hell did this radiation get in the ice like this? Like, that shouldn't be possible. And what it actually showed was the ice was a lot thinner back in the day. And what we now have been able to confirm, because it's kind of weird that we find all of these woolly mammoths up in the ice with half chewed, half digested food in their system, and all of the greenery that they eat, you only find it in the tropics as of right now.
Yeah.
Well, then you start looking at the whole global warming narrative. The global warming narrative is actually kind of true in one regard. It's the fact that our planet shouldn't have as much ice on it as it does. And what we're starting to realize is that the poles used to be on a tropics level of heat and moisture, and all of that heat and moisture, or after things changed, that the heat disappeared and then the moisture solidified. And what we now know is that there's a significant landmass below the Antarctic ice sheet and the Arctic ice sheet. There's land under there. Like Antarctica, the Russians have already confirmed that in Antarctica there's massive oil deposits in their sector of Antarctica that they're researching. There's massive oil deposits. So what we're starting to figure out is that it's like, oh, okay, so are we literally at the tail end of an ice age? And that is kind of true, but also at the same time, it has to do with our magnetic field and what I don't really like him anymore because he's gone full off the deep end and has just completely ruined his own image for the sake of, I'm right. But Ben Davidson, if you know who he is.
No, I don't know that guy.
Okay, so he's an associate of Tom Longo, but he's a science guy. He focuses on this stuff, and there is what we refer to as the disaster cycle. Right. And basically, it's a cyclical cycle in which the Earth and the Sun, basically the universe as a whole, goes through this disaster period where it's like shit gets turned on its head, and all of a sudden things are really weird for a few decades, and then everything starts going back to how it's supposed to be after shit just goes pear-shaped. Okay. And the last time that that this disaster cycle occurred, if the estimations and the models are correct, humanity went from having a few 100,000 people as part of the species to a couple thousand. And it's a case of we're starting to kind of understand that, like, oh, we do not know our history. We don't understand, like, everybody thought carbon dating was the epitome of scientific discovery. Well, then we realized, like, oh, carbon dating's been off. In reality, a lot of the things that were carbon dated, oh, this is 15,000 years old. Actually, in reality, it's probably older than that. And that's what we've started to realize, is that it's like our history, like our evolution as a species, might have actually been a longer time frame than most people realize.
Oh yeah,
so
the Greg Hancock stuff.
Yeah. So what you end up having across the board is that Greenland, it's not necessarily any resources there. Necessarily, the resources matter because the resources are going to allow us to do what we need to do in order to survive the next disaster cycle. It's the location, because if the Arctic Circle all of a sudden becomes a tropical paradise for 30, 40, 50 years, that's where we're going to have to freaking survive versus the rest of the planet. Because if you understand how it works, basically, if the poles go tropical, that means the equator goes Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that we're going to have to flee away from the equator when this cycle happens. Now, again, it's all supposition and it's estimates. And it could happen. It could not happen. We don't know fully at this point in time, but we do know that there's ever since they started using electromagnetic radiation to date things rather than carbon dating, because they've basically gotten rid of carbon dating because it's been disproven so hard at this point in time that it's just worthless. Now that we're using electromagnetic radiation to age things, we're starting to realize, like, oh crap, we were way off. We were way fucking off on shit.
Yeah. And of course, you have this whole scientific establishment that doesn't want to admit it because then they don't want to admit
absolutely
wrong.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the biggest things right now is that you see it with RFK, with Maha, make America healthy again, and so on and so forth. The scientific and medical establishment do not like it because it completely destroys their narratives about things.
Right.
So to get back to Michael's point, so here's the thing that you have to understand is the EU just deployed about a platoon's worth of guys to Greenland over the course of the past week. Those guys are not being sent there to, quote unquote, protect Greenland. They're there to enforce compliance on Greenland. They're there to make sure the government isn't doing anything that the EU doesn't want it to do. Mm-hmm. And they're there to make sure that they can arrest any, sympathizers with the US. Because they wouldn't have to send, like, you look into the guys that they sent from France, what were they? They were all military police, all of them. They aren't going to send gendarmerie unless they know damn well that Greenland is flipping to the US. They're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So now they're sending the enforcers in to make sure compliance is maintained. Now, will the U.S. invade Greenland? Invasion is a very strong word. In reality, it would be, these EU foot soldiers decided to come to Greenland and arrest a bunch of our people. Hey, send in Delta.
Oh yeah, I learned a lot recently about that from some of the people who were covering that thing. Yeah,
Delta.
I think yesterday.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is I've been in the special forces world quite a bit because I know guys that are in the life and I understand their capabilities. Like, for example, everybody is like, "Oh, Navy SEALs are awesome." And I'm like, I don't give a shit about Navy SEALs. Like, DevGru is what I care about. Like, if you know anything about special forces, DevGru are the top guys. Navy SEALs are the B team.
What did they say about the Venezuela operation? Why they didn't give it to SEAL Team 6 is because they didn't want it being live podcasted on.
Well, no, they didn't. They didn't want to risk. They didn't want to risk the operation flopping because a bunch of them got killed because they decided to try to grandstand and write a book. It's like, but no, that's the thing is that. We don't have to invade Greenland, but there could be kinetic options that are on the table simply because the EU decides to try to fuck around. And at the end of the day, like, I'm not saying the people that inhabit what we call the EU are the problem. I'm saying the mechanism behind the EU is the problem. Mm-hmm. And if we need to eliminate that mechanism, we will. Like, for example, and I'll just bring this up. Trump the president extended an invitation to the royal family of the UK to come to the United States for the 250th celebration of the United States.
That'd be ironic.
Well, no, here's the point. Point is that what happens? Oh, the royal family all comes over here and then they stay. Because then at that point in time, we can collapse the bureaucracy in the UK, and then Charles abdicates the throne. William takes hold. We go in. The fucking Black Watch and the Gurkhas show up, and they fucking handle business.
You
And
know,
that's the-
Warhound,
Okay,
that's
go
a
ahead.
good scenario. But you know that Britain is in bad shape. It's
Oh,
really
it is.
bad.
Oh, absolutely. It's in
And
terrible shape.
and there's some people, academics, saying they could head for there's civil unrest coming. Could be even civil war. So
No, it
yeah.
will. It will be. It will be civil war. Let me just explain it like this. The situation in Nepal with the whole color revolution thing that was done there. What happened? A shit ton of the Gurkhas requested leave during that time period. We have confirmation of that. There are only three regiments in the British military that I know for a fact are completely and utterly loyal to the king. That is the Black Watch,
Yeah.
the Royal Patricias, and the Gurkhas. Those are the only three regiments that I know for a fact that are loyal to the crown. Period in a story. And right now, what we are seeing is the preparation for the crown reasserting its control over the nation and telling the bureaucracy to go fuck itself. Because the bureaucracy are the ones that created this situation because of their masters in Brussels and on the high table.
But Starmer wants to get Britain back into the EU. Do you think it's going to happen?
No, I don't believe so. I at this point in time, given how things are accelerating, mind you, I had the opinion that, everybody was freaking out because, all the KC-17s are taking off from the UK and whatnot, and they're heading towards Iran, blah, 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 blah. My suspicion is that there were helicopters flying into Iran the past couple days. And those KC-17s were going in to refuel and provide support and logistics for those helicopters. And they were dropping guys off in the middle of Iran. And mind you, those guys are not there. They are not there to help the revolution. They're there to stop the revolution. Now, Khomeini's going to be forced to abdicate because Trump is going to look at him and be like, "Look, you couldn't hold it together. You couldn't do the job you were told to do. So we're going to replace you. We're going to put our new guy in." The regime will not change. The point is that we're going to stop the revolutionaries from being able to topple that regime, and then we're going to make sure that it fucking stays copacetic. There's also reports that are indicative that the Russians have also deployed forces potentially to Iran. I haven't been able to confirm that.
I have no doubt Spetsnaz is on the ground there.
Well, no, it's not Spetsnaz, technically speaking. I
still call them that.
There were, there were several is it GRU or GRU?
GRU.
GRU, yeah.
Russian military intelligence, not to be confused with the SVR.
Intelligence,
there is. Yeah, so there has been reports that several GRU teams have not been cited in Russia for a while, and it's like, okay, and mind you, all three of the great powers, America, Russia, China, ARC, all three great powers have a vested interest in Iran because right now Iran is the powder keg that could cause the big war.
Yeah.
If we can stop Iran from popping off, then everything's good. If we can't stop it from popping off, then at that point in time, it's like, well, shit. Okay, here comes the big one. Here comes the big fight.
Okay. So you mean that if so you said they're gonna replace one of the leaders, the Iranian leader is gonna go and then they're gonna orchestrate not a regime change but put somebody else in who's what, pro-Western?
A succession. Yes. Well, no, not pro-Western, pro-sovereigntist.
Yeah.
A sovereigntist. Not pro-Western, a sovereigntist. Because what we need in the world is a shit ton of sovereigntists. We don't need being pro-West means pro-EU. That's what the United States is not part of the West. It is not. This is the frontier, bitch. It's either kill or be killed for your slice of the pie. This is the frontier.
Yeah.
Get bent.
And
I'm not
Western
speaking.
Europe
I'm not.
is the
I'm not
West.
speaking to you specifically, by the way. I'm talking to the
No, I
EU
understand.
fuckheads.
Yeah, no. We're
Right.
all enemies of the.
We're all anti-EU here. I think we don't.
Yeah.
None of us love Brussels too much.
I'm just
but-
clarifying.
Sure. So what's going to happen to the transatlantic alliance as we knew it, or as I knew it as a kid? Is it going to fall apart? What's going to happen to it?
I'll say, yeah. So for me, I think it will break up. I think this is all going to disappear. Like America, what people call ARC, or America, Russia, China, will be the three great blocks. And I think I started on this journey with Peter Zeehan, and then I ended up with Gonzalo Lira, to which he once said to me, that's like starting off on crack cocaine and ending with psychedelics. But Peter Zeehan, I think, when it comes to geopolitics, I think he's right, but I think he would agree with most of us on these things. He has to sell to Washington insiders, and he can't tell them the truth because they won't believe him. And
So real quick, to speak on Zihan real quick, because me and my guys, we trash Zihan all the time.
Oh yeah.
The biggest problem that you have with Zihan is the lack of understanding that he has to sell his books.
Yeah.
And he has to make sure that he's doing whatever he can to sell his books. And I apologize, I just got handed a baby. But the point is that the vast majority of his analysis is based off of that ill-conceived notion that they have to, oh my lord, that they have to do this thing because that's what sells. And the problem is when you continuously operate from that position, it completely skews your analysis.
Yeah.
Completely. And that's the problem we have with the CIA. Is the CIA has completely and utterly become the enemy of the United States because of that skewed analysis all the time. So, yeah, Zihan is unfortunately one of those guys that it's like, sorry, dude, like you might have some good points every so often, but you definitely you're selling your data to the wrong people.
Right. He's a good introductory. He's the person I can send the normies to when I want them to get into this. Watch this guy, and you'll understand some of what's going on, but you won't understand the deeper financial implications that you get with, say, Tom.
But I think you're referring to that best-selling author on geopolitics. I read some of his, just going through some of his books. He has this talent. You're right. You have to sell books, but he's able to make geopolitics, accessible to the masses.
Right.
And he puts it in a very succinct manner. So that's not easy. And I think that's his real forte. That's a strong point that he has. So, let's give him credit for that. But you're right. He's gonna be always thinking like a bestseller sort of author, and maybe he doesn't do any deep dives into, topics which are too complex that might throw off some of his readers.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Like he just says, well, geographically, there are these fault lines in Europe, so this is going to be the things that are going to happen. So I was watching him. He came up on my feed a few days ago again for the first time in a long time. So I had seen he was on trigonometry, and it was kind of interesting. He was like telling them, yeah, Britain has to make a deal with America right away, and you're probably going to lose a lot of your internal industry stuff with this trade deal. Turned out the trade deal that Starmer got was the best trade deal on because I was also watching Howard Lutnick give an interview, and he was talking like, yeah, we gave the person, we started off with giving these guys the trade deal, and then the next guy, we knew we were going to make it tougher. We were like playing it on a first come, first served basis. So we really did want the Brits on board because it has been and always will be kind of America's way to get into Europe when they want to, like an unsinkable aircraft carrier. But I do think we're going to see France and become moving away from stuff. France will be, I think. Well, I think, of course, the old Slavic states are going to be the first to go because they're the most. They have no. They broke away from the Soviet Union because they were tired of communism. They have no respect for any of the Euro communism. That's worse in some ways.
Well, and just to point this out, you see the movement already being made. You see the attack on Italy to pull them out of the EU. You have the attack on Greece to pull them out of the EU. And then you have the reconciliation of the Slavic states in the Yugoslavs. And at this point in time, some of the angles that I'm looking at personally, there's a chance that we could see Yugoslavia back in our lifetimes. Mm-hmm. There is a massive movement in Southern and Eastern Europe to pull away, and they had to freaking fake out an election in Romania just to preserve that.
Yeah.
And hell, we're seeing buyer's remorse in freaking in Bulgaria already. So it's like, oh well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm very glad that
the EU made a move. But the EU made a move. They got the Bulgarians by the balls by putting them into the Eurozone. And, now they're caught in that trap. I think that was another, way Brussels to reassert control over the Balkans. And Romania, they obviously interfered in the elections, like the Russians. And everybody's accusing the Russians, but the EU can do it too. And now they took Brussels got Bulgaria, poor country, into the Eurozone. Mm-hmm. I think that's geopolitical, geoeconomic move to reassert the control of the EU in that part of the world.
Well, I'm gonna give you a bit of information here. So what you actually saw is basically they were if you look at the dollar trade when it came to Bulgaria, dollars were completely killing the euro. The euro was just not even a consideration whatsoever because of the dollar. And then as soon as we started putting a stranglehold on foreign dollars, through SOFR and then the reverse repo facility and a few other things, the Bulgarians weren't able to get a hold of dollars in order to prop up their economy. Which, the problem is that if you look, like if I remember correctly, France is 52% debt to government spending. Sorry, they're 52% of their GDP is government spending, mm-hmm. and most of Europe is high 40s. Like they rely on government spending so hard. Like the U.S., like it's bad enough that the U.S. is 32% or something like that. Like it's bad enough. Like all of these other states, they're heads and tails above us when it comes to government spending. And so without access to cheap dollars, they had to jump into the Eurozone just to have a chance of propping up their economy. Well, then all of a sudden, shit went backwards. And now they're looking at a credit crunch in Bulgaria that is going to result in a massive recession.
Precisely. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, that there'll be negative impact to that. But of course, it looks like it's a positive move. But as you say, it could slow down the economy. It could, could lead to more unemployment and other negative impacts.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, Bulgaria, in my opinion, Bulgaria will be the impetus for a lot of the Balkans to look at the EU and be like, fuck it, we're done. Because they're going to because you're going to have a rush of Bulgarians out of Bulgaria now. That's what's going to happen, because they're going to be like, I can't make a living here. I can't sustain myself here. I have to move.
Right.
And so you're going to have the same thing that happened to Poland after Poland joined the EU. You're going to have the same thing that happened, where you now have a shit ton of Poles all over the EU. and they're there just working menial jobs just to be able to sustain themselves.
Yeah, a lot of them went back, but it's an interesting comparison. You're right that when they joined the EU, you had this huge exodus, millions left for Western Europe, and maybe by bringing, the of course Poland has its own national currency, but I didn't think about that. You're right that if now with Bulgaria abandoning the Lev in the Eurozone, and I think they're even in Schengen, you're going to see a huge migration from
Yep.
Bulgaria into other parts of Europe. That sounds very plausible.
Well, and furthermore, then you look at the situation with Italy. Italy is the third leg of the stool that is the EU. You have Germany, France, and Italy. Without the Italian tax base and without the Italian industry base, the EU doesn't exist. And right now you have this massive attack on the Italian bond market because they're trying to quash they're trying to maintain the German yield spread with the US. They're trying to maintain the French yield spread with the US, and just all these different moves that are being made, and they can't they don't got enough fingers to plug all the holes. They're bleeding cash hand over fist, and they just do not know how to freaking do it. And the only way that they know how to do it is the time tested, hey, let's start a world war and collapse our economies.
Well, that's the point. I mean, I think you were referring to, I'm not an economist, deficit spending or like financing the debt is what France is doing and what Italy is doing. And I think that just, adds to the inflation in these
Yep.
countries, those three, like, well, France, Italy, to a lesser extent in Germany. But they're all feeling, the pain of inflation. Like I'm here in Europe and in Austria, you feel the pain of inflation. And on top of that, there's the war going on in Ukraine. And energy prices have gone up because of the sabotaging action against the Nord Stream. So yeah, there is a lot of economic pressure, domestic pressure on these bigger European economies to make either they continue spending like this or they're going to have to go into austerity mode. And like you said, Bulgaria maybe will their economy will slow down, and they'll turn into like what Greece turned into after the financial crisis, 2007, 2008 crisis. And yeah, we're going to see very hard economic times in Europe. That's why I think they're pushing this war, the Europeans, because they know that there's so much popular discontent.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But there's also a point that you might not have considered is, there's a massive crunch within the commodity markets right now. You look at, like, for example, why did the EU freak out so bad about Venezuela? Well, you look into it and you realize that the illegal oil flows when it comes to Venezuela, there was a lot of that illegal oil that was going into India. And who does India primarily sell their petroleum products to? They sell them to Europe. And so it's like, okay, interesting. Where, then you start to look into the shadow fleet proper, and you realize the Iranians developed the concept, they developed the mechanism, but everybody participates in the shadow fleet. Everybody. Like, there's not a single nation in the world that doesn't participate in it in some form or fashion. And then you start to look into it, and it's like, okay, wait a minute. These shadow fleet tankers, they go off to, say, they're in the middle of the Atlantic. They do a ship-to-ship transfer of oil, and they fudge the numbers, and they can bring that Venezuelan oil, even though the EU has it sanctioned, they can bring it straight into the EU. And it's like,
yeah, so it's a parallel shipping system, but it's not really officially registered.
Oh,
so are they insured, these tankers, these shadow
most
tankers?
Most of them no. Which then also leads to the cost of the oil being negligible at best. which this is a thing that and this is my personal take on it, is that you have a massive illicit network that's propped up by the EU, and the EU has been using this illicit network to funnel resources into the EU. Because here's the thing, is that, you know, you look at the situation with Rwanda in Africa, and, you know, everybody's freaking out in the EU specifically is freaking out about the illicit gold trade and metal trade that Rwanda is currently doing in terms of the Congo. Well, then it's like, okay, now wait a minute, why are you freaking out about this so hard? Like, were you getting some benefit from the Congo? And then you look into it, and a lot of the concerns that own the operations that are mining in the Congo, they're all EU based, every single one of them. And then it's like,
No, I'm
holy
glad
shit.
you brought this up. Can I just? I think you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you sort of gave us a bit of you painted this picture about what's going on in the Great Lakes area, Rwanda, Congo.
Yep.
But I think Ledge and I, because you know we have the Canadian connection, a lot of the companies that have done the gold mining are also based in Canada.
Yeah.
Canada is the biggest
I consider
mining. You know,
yes.
in terms
Our
of
little slice of the British Empire.
it's 70% of the stock market, I think, or 60 is in Toronto based or in Vancouver. It's all mining. So Canada has a great deal of.
Well, Michael, I just want to say this right now. I consider Canada part of the EU. I do not consider them a sovereign nation. They're part of the EU.
That's true. Yeah. It is. Actually, there was talk of Canada joining the European Union. I think officially when Carney was saying this. So.
Oh no, they're talking about it right. They're talking about it right now in response to the whole Greenland thing, because now they have to, and you have to understand is the EU is this is Brussels and what we refer to as the high table in our circles. They are desperate to prevent the Americans from shutting them out of the Western Hemisphere, because the Western Hemisphere is a literal gold mine. You know, you go into Canada, and you start there's a guy I follow on YouTube. His name is Dan Hurd. He's a great dude. Fucking love him. And he goes down onto the Fraser River, and he's just panning. He's doing simple panning operations. And he's pulling freaking, half a gram or a gram of gold off of the beaches, off the Fraser River. Like, there is so much fucking gold, just gold alone, in Canada and in the Western Hemisphere as a whole, that it's insane. You just got to pull it out of the ground. And that's not even to count, freaking aluminum and uranium.
Canada has a lot of
copper.
uranium.
Alaska. Alaska has the largest known subterranean. Oh, sorry, baby.
Yeah.
But they have up in Alaska. We have the largest, potentially the largest subterranean deposit of copper ever found in the world. And mind you, the Obama administration and the Biden administration, which is just Obama 2.0, they tried desperately to kill this project. They did not want us working this project, because at the end of the day, when you really think about it, if the EU could have their way, they would freaking collapse the US and reintegrate it back into the European system completely. And then at that point in time, they would control it.
Yeah.
So,
that explains why EU, Canada, the trade between EU and Canada is definitely something to look for in 2026, and the trade between US and Canada will diminish. That explains why Carney is in China. I think there's going to be a kind of competition or rivalry between China and the EU to get their paws on Canada, unless Trump does something dramatic like he's doing with Greenland, and pressures Canada to join them.
Well, we are having the pressure. I was watching a video this morning. Alberta's separation is up to 45%.
There you go. Yeah, that's almost a certain. That's almost a done deal. I mean, Alberta's going to go, right? So once they go, everything is up for grabs.
Yeah.
And definitely there's a lot of territorial designs on Canada. As you said, all that you just go panning on the shoreline of the river, and you get yourself, I don't know, 100 grams of gold just like that. So yeah, it's definitely going to be the geopolitical flash.
Well, so here's something to build on what you're saying there. You know, the reason why they're pissed about Alberta is because Alberta is the route. So we're working this concept, and you have to go back into history, back into the 1890s. And a lot of people don't remember this, but the Russian Empire and the United States were very close allies for years.
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't
to
know
offset
is
the
that,
British. It was always to offset the British.
Yeah.
Sorry, to keep the British at bay.
Yeah. And what were we trying to do? We were trying to build a freaking railroad bridge from Siberia to Alaska, and then we were going to link it up to the continental United States. Well, guess what? If you look at the proposed routes, there were two proposed routes. One of them runs down through British Columbia. Well, at this point in time, British Columbia is that's commie country. And then you look at the second proposed route, and it goes out and around and down through Alberta.
There you go.
And
perfect corridor.
And oh, by the way, the new pipeline project that we signed with Alberta, well, if you look at it and you look at the railroad that's supposed to run parallel to the pipeline, you realize, like, oh shit, it follows the exact same route that they proposed back in the 1890s. And so it's an instantaneous understanding that we're working this. Like Dimitrov, what's his name? It's President Putin's economics guy.
The economic advisor there.
Yeah, he was.
Or Peskov? Are you talking about Peskov? Are you talking
not
about
Peskov. No, I'm talking about the economics
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been in and out. He's been in and out of the U.S. multiple times the past year, and every time there's this big economic move that everybody's like, oh my God, the Americans are trying to assert economic dominance over the Western Hemisphere, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, and the Russians benefit from this too. Like, hell, the Ukraine negotiations right now. Like, here's the thing about the Ukraine war, which is hilarious to me, is that the negotiations are still ongoing. They're still happening. Everything is still being talked about, and people are freaking out about Ukraine. And it's like, Ukraine doesn't matter at this point in time. It's a done deal. The fighting that's ongoing right now is most people don't realize this. The Tet Offensive in Vietnam happened while the North and South Vietnamese were negotiating a peace settlement.
Right.
Like operations continue until the documents are signed.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it is.
Yeah. No, that's right. And Kissinger was talking to the North Vietnamese. It's a fantastic example that you put out here, Warhound, that you had this massive military offensive by the North Vietnamese, and they were simultaneously you were having these peace talks. So this is something very similar. I'm glad you brought this up.
No, and that's well, and that's the fun part about it, is that people forget this kind of stuff. Like you go back to World War I, and they were literally there were multiple instances where they had to full on start beating the shit out of people just to get them to stop fighting during bayonet charges during World War I, because the freaking the peace deal had been signed. Everything had been done. It was over. The war was over. And there were literally officers running around punching the fuck out of their own guys to get them to stop fighting. Like it's just a case of this is how this shit works, and this idea that you have to have a ceasefire every time you want to negotiate. It's like, no, that's not how that works. It can't work like that. And you look at Thailand and Cambodia, same freaking deal. The whole ceasefire there, it was a ceasefire. It wasn't a peace deal. It was a ceasefire. And now they're fucking shooting each other again.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
give me a switch.
Yeah, I mean the interesting part is that you mentioned that this Tet offensive. Then I was seeing the Russians; they're really rolling right through Ukraine, and
they're absolutely obliterating.
Yeah, and the talks continue, and I think the Russians are going to have a very favorable position in when they start signing the peace deal, whatever that is. It's going to be very, very disadvantageous for Ukraine. I think it'll come to a capitulation at some point. What do you think? I mean, the Ukrainians are not in good shape.
Okay, so I will sum it up like this. There are estimations that the Ukrainians have about 190 to 220,000 men under arms right now. Their attrition rate, just based off desertions, last year was around 160,000. Meaning that if that trend holds going into this year, and they have around 160,000 desertions, they will literally have no army left by the end of this year, period and story. Like, they will not have any fighting forces whatsoever left, because it will just be a case of whoever decides to try to stand and fight will just get bombed into oblivion.
Yeah.
So it is literally a case of, by the end of this year, like I've been talking to a few guys, and we've all come to kind of the same consensus that the war is probably going to reach spring, and it's going to just fucking end, because the Ukrainians are just going to have to capitulate because their commands are just falling apart.
And what about the Kiev government or the leadership? What's going to happen to them, you think?
Frankly speaking, if Zelensky makes it out alive, I'll be surprised, because I think the people themselves are going to just freaking kill him. I think he's literally just going to get pulled out of a limo and just curb stomped. That's my personal take. But
he'll get a Gaddafi surprise.
Yeah, basically. Well, and here's the thing: is that we're now looking at the probability that the partition of Ukraine is going to be quite severe. You're going to have the Russians taking basically the entire eastern half, and plus Odessa. I do not believe that they're going to leave Odessa on the board for the Europeans at all.
I agree. And then, I agree. It's too strategic. I agree. Yeah.
Yes, and then you're going to have the Hungarians. The Hungarians have already been offered Transcarpathia.
You see, wait a sec, Spyguy. Wasn't I predicting this a year ago?
I know we were predicting it, but I just didn't think it was a good deal for some people. That's all.
Okay, well, go ahead. Sorry, Warhound.
Yeah. No.
I was saying this a year ago.
The EU doesn't want this situation, but it seems like it's the situation that's lining up, because the Hungarians have basically already been offered Transcarpathia. The Poles are being offered Lvov, which
but I say we don't take it.
Well, that's the thing, is at the end of the day, most people don't again, I point this out, is that you look at the population of Lvov, the Lvov region. Prior to World War II, it was 70% Polish, and then after World War II,
absolutely.
it was.
That's where my parents came from. My forefathers it was all Polish. Absolutely.
Yeah. But then you look at the demographic after World War II, and it was 90% Ukrainian, and that's because the Ukrainians killed all the Poles.
That Stalin had also did all those population transfers.
Well, and mind you, those population transfers were actually a good thing for the Soviet Union, frankly speaking.
Oh yeah, no, I fully agree. They were rough, but I'm much happier having all the Poles in Poland.
But no, the point is, the Ukrainians killed so many Poles in Lvov, it was unfucking real. It should be recognized as a fucking genocide. But of course, the EU doesn't want to do that, because then that gives credence to the Polish complaints, and they don't want to do that. But the point is that. Then you really think about it. It's like, okay, if the Ukrainians take Lvov, the Hungarians take Transcarpathia, the Belarusians take control of the territories that they lay claim to in Ukraine, and then the Russians take the chunk that they are. Kiev is left with what is effectively the Duchy of Kiev. And it's like, holy shit, it's literally, we're literally back in prior to the war between Muscovy and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. We're literally back to that time period where Kiev, the Duchy of Kiev, was a very, very much smaller chunk of land. And then at that point in time, it's like, okay, well, you got your little city state. Now what? And then at that point in time, they're going to be sitting there. Could they potentially join the EU? Yeah, sure they could. But the problem is that the powers that are on their borders, well, two of them are. One of them is completely hostile to the EU, being Russia. One of them is talking about leaving the EU, which is Hungary. And then Poland. Poland's a toss-up because at this point in time, if the Visegrad countries decide to say fuck it and go their own way and try to build out their own economics, Ukraine is cut off. At that point in time, do they become a Visegrad country? Which they could, but it's gonna be a pain in the ass for them. Or do they say fuck it and you potentially get a government that's a little more on the pragmatic side that looks at the Belarusians and it's like, okay, can we partner with you guys, please?
Yep. Or the Baltics.
No. That's part of the Visegrad stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Baltics.
I'm so used to the Baltics being the worst guys around.
Oh no, they are. They absolutely are. They're fucking terrible. It's literally 3 swamps that I wish we could just bomb. But the point is that they fall within the Visegrad side of things because Visegrad countries, which is
oh, I'm well aware.
Hungary,
I wrote a board game called Visegrad 4. Okay.
Yeah. So you got Hungary, you got Czechoslovakia, and then you got Poland. They fall within the Visegrad sphere, technically speaking. So they would be part of the whole Visegrad stuff. But the point is that at the end of the day, and mind you, that might be the play. If you put a buffer block between the Russians and the EU, and you get Visegrad in place and actually firm and controlled, then at that point in time, it's like, oh, wait.
But it's because you're talking about the 3 Seas initiative from the Baltics, the Black Sea down to, the Adriatic. You're absolutely right. We're going to have like this buffer there, between Russia and Western Europe. And then you'll have this landlocked, whatever remnants of Ukraine will be in the Kiev territory, wherever that is. But that's it. We're going to see that buffer slowly crystallize, and that'll stabilize. I think the situation that could happen.
Michael,
I see that.
And Michael, just to kind of give you a little. What would be a foundational piece to that? The rebirth of Yugoslavia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, all the Yugoslavs by themselves do not have economies to speak of. But together, they had one of the largest economies in Europe.
That's right.
Like at the end of the day, they would be, well, and that's the point, is that they could be, and mind you, I believe, given Melania Trump's, everybody remember she might be Slovenian, but first and foremost, she's a Yugoslav. She grew up in the Yugoslav era.
Yugoslavia. Right.
And so she has definitely been meeting with people in the background. A lot of people don't understand that the First Lady plays a big role if the First Lady is doing the job she's supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
No. Well, there you go. I had no idea that she has this clout, and I wouldn't be surprised that she's pulling some strings. Maybe putting the puzzle together, and you have a kind of a loose union of the former Yugoslavia reemerging. That would be definitely a force for.
Well, Michael, are you aware of the Croatians or what happened with Croatia and Serbia?
Well, yeah, sure. I remember that. You mean in the 1990s in Europe when it
No,
all split up?
I'm talking about what happened just this past year. The Croatians acknowledged their role in the genocides.
Oh, the Ustasia. Okay, during this. Oh, no, You're talking about the 1990s, not the Second World War. Okay, I got
Yep.
it. They acknowledged.
They acknowledged their role and basically offered a diplomatic apology to Serbia for their role in the genocides.
Oh, really? They came out and they admitted slaughtering Serbs. Wow.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
And
that's
of
a
course, what
gesture.
happens next year? I just double checked. Polish parliamentary elections.
Yeah. And guess who's going to win?
Tusk will be gone.
PIS. Tusk will be history. They're going to toss him out. He's going to be gone.
Yeah, I looked at I looked at Polish polling recently, and because I wanted to know about this weird Crown Regency party or whatever they are called, and I'm like, holy crap! The two far right ultra nationalist parties, including the monarchist party, are polling at 10%.
That's right, Brown. Yeah, very strong, very anti-EU, very nationalist, ultra nationalist.
Yeah.
And they don't love the Ukrainians either. These ultra nationalists.
Yeah.
Polish
They despise them. They just no. Use the right word. They despise them.
Yes. Well, that's the more accurate.
We have very good reason to despise them, even though some of them are relatives of mine.
Yeah, and mine too. Well, there you go. I mean, we're seeing an incredible, topsy-turvy. Everything is up in the air, and the way that the whole thing will sort of materialize is going to happen this year, because as Warhound said, this war in Ukraine is coming to an end. Springtime, and then it's over, right? You don't see it going further beyond 2026, because the army is about to be they'll be annihilated unless the U.S. comes in.
Oh, no, they're not going to be.
The United States is never coming in there.
Oh, they're not going to be annihilated. They're just going to leave. The desertion rates are so high. The reason why they've been doing the rabid recruitment that they have been doing is because they can't replace desertions fast enough, because there's so many guys that are literally just going across the line and surrendering.
Wow.
Do we
have credible report? I mean, some objective, trustworthy, credible reports that they're just leaving and abandoning.
The Russians made an app for it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, literally they have there's an app that the Russians made for Ukrainians to communicate with them and surrender. And then also there's videos, hundreds of videos of whole platoons or whole companies of Ukrainians just fucking saying nope. And mind you, a lot of the reports that are coming out about these units is that they murder their officers and they just fucking walk across the line.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Ukrainians don't like talking about it, but every so often they have to tell the truth about the situation. Like when they sorry, baby. But when it comes down to like the casualty rates, we've never gotten solid casualty numbers until the Ukrainians inadvertently released the numbers on accident. And it was fucking appalling, because it was around 300,000 to 400,000 Russian casualties for 1.2 million Ukrainian.
Yeah.
By the way, those were the confirmed numbers.
Yeah.
So
I can only imagine how many MIA there are.
Yeah, well, MIA, and I'm glad you brought that up, and of course, the casualty numbers are huge. Invalids, permanently crippled, wounded. We can add another 100,000, 200,000.
Well, so the dead. So somebody did some calculations based on the satellite imagery of the Ukrainian military cemeteries they've been putting into play.
Yeah.
They did some calculations, and so far there's probably around 500,000 to 700,000, somewhere in that region, Ukrainian dead. And then the number of invalids, we're talking probably about 300,000 to 400,000. The number of crippled is absolutely insane because mind you, the crippled ones, generally speaking, are the ones that are the lucky ones that actually got saved, because the Ukrainians can't evacuate their wounded. They don't have the ability to evacuate their wounded whatsoever. And so guys are sitting in field in first aid posts on the front line for hours or days at a time. Like there was one report that, if I can remember the details, it was they routinely had 30 to 40 guys in the first aid post at any given time, and every day they were having to pull 10 or so guys, at least bare minimum, out of the first aid post because they were dead, because they died, they had succumbed to their wounds, and they just couldn't evacuate them because of the you look at the pictures of the drones, the number of fiber optic lines that are draped all over places, and you realize how many fucking drones are being used. Vehicles are getting hit like crazy. If you're driving a light utility vehicle to evacuate wounded and whatnot, it's like, your shit's getting blown up. Period. End of story. You have no chance of fucking being able to survive. And so, they can't evacuate their wounded, and so the ones that get lucky are the invalids, which they get pulled out finally, but they have to get a foot or a leg or an arm amputated because an infection set in. And so they're lucky to be alive, but they lost a limb because of it. And that's the majority.
Lost their limb, so that's the price. But they're still alive. And it's very interesting because you really paint such a bleak portrait. But the Russians have capacity to take out their wounded immediately. I understand, right? Their casualty rate is lower,
for the most part. And what it is with the Russians, and this is the thing that you have to understand, is because the Russians are operating under a much tighter intelligence side. So when you watch Patrick, what's his
Hennigan.
Is that his name?
Patrick Hennigan.
Lancaster. That is Patrick Lancaster. You watch every video of when he goes to the front line, and they are being as sneaky as fucking possible when getting to the front line. Like they are. It's borderline SEER training. Like, let's be honest, it's borderline SEER training. They are fucking hiding as best they fucking can to keep themselves as impossible to see from the drones as possible. And it's like, oh shit, like you guys learned quick. The Ukrainians, for some reason, didn't learn this shit, okay, maybe they have learned it, but because they're the ones on the defensive, they have to lock down positions, so they're easier to hit. But the Russians, they're being very mindful to not get caught out by the drones on a consistent basis. And then when it comes to evacuating their wounded, generally speaking, and let's be honest, when you start reading the frontline reports where it's like, hey, the Ukrainians had 20 guys covering a 1 to 2 kilometer front, it's like, oh shit, like you get a single platoon that's able to bum rush fucking 5 or 10 guys that are protecting a specific sector of that front line. All of a sudden they're able to breach through and fucking move so fast that the front line moves 500 meters forward so fast that the medics are able to get up and pick up any wounded as quickly as they can, and then they're fucking gone before the drones are even dispatched. So at the end of the day, when it's just a matter of fire superiority, and the Russians have the fire superiority through and through.
I was arguing with some Ukrainian guy who goes on Newsmax all the time, and I pointed out to him, like, you're telling me the Russians, according to NATO sources, the Russians are building 3 to 1 as many tanks and 7 to 1 more artillery rounds than the Ukrainians are, but you can't. You're telling me that the Russians are taking 2-to-1 casualties on the attack on the advance. Sorry, that's not how this works.
Yeah, no, and one of the important things to understand about and this is the difference between a civilian who gets it and a civilian who doesn't. A civilian who gets it understands that artillery is the king of the battlefield, period, in a story. Doesn't matter what form that artillery takes form in, the artillery always is the one that dictates the victor. And it's a matter of when you can bring 18 to 20 barrels for every fucking barrel that the enemy brings to the fight's so one-sided, it's unreal. Because if you can prepare, if you can do preparatory bombardment and completely and utterly annihilate the ability of your enemy to actually put up an effective defense, because here's the thing, and this is just from my knowledge. When you're getting shelled in a trench line, you know, given historical record and everything, when you're getting shelled in a trench line, you don't stand or sit in the trench itself. You get into the dugouts. You get out of the trench itself and into the dugouts, because the dugouts are fortified. The trench itself is not fortified. And the problem is that if you're up on the firing parapet, all of a sudden, you know, if you're up on the fire step, you're sitting there like, oh, hey, my head is fully exposed to any shrapnel coming across the freaking line right now. And this is why they do the dugouts the way they do. The dugouts go in and down from the trench.
So what is the just you know, from a lay your expertise is valuable. So as from a layman's point of view, what is the difference between the dugout
Okay.
and the trench?
Okay, so the trench is where you fight from. So the trench is the open air, you know, ditch in the ground that you fight from. And then the dugout is the bunker that is attached to the trench that you use to shelter, sleep, eat, you know, store supplies, et cetera, et cetera. And the point is that at the end of the day, you know, you're sitting there and you've got, you know, again, you've got a massive disparity on the front line, where guys are not are not being able to staff their positions properly, and all of a sudden they start dropping, you know, say they drop 100 freaking rounds and you got 10 guys on the line. Well, what happens if you lose 5 guys to artillery? All of a sudden you got 5 guys to hold that position, and all of a sudden they just hit you with a fucking platoon of dudes. And that platoon of guys just starts, you know, lobbing fucking rifle grenades, and you know, you got suppressive fire, and you guys, you just have guys bum rushing your position in such a way.
Warhound. So just hang on, because so when you have this cocktail of what you have, the artillery, you have grenades, you have also drones. All of this, the Russians have obviously superiority in terms of firepower.
Yeah.
And what about the Ukrainians? What's their defensive capability when they see this onslaught? That's the thing
retreat? That's the thing is so it's funny enough, the Finnish actually showed us the methodology for this. They specifically, you know, I'm referring to the Mannerheim line. You know, the Finnish, when the Soviets hit the Mannerheim line, they hit it with, at the time, the largest artillery barrage mankind had ever seen. Like this completely freaking, it defied anything that was seen in the First World War. Like the amount of artillery and steel that the Russians dropped on the Mannerheim line at the time was insane. Mind you, not the largest artillery barrage of the war, by the way, because the Germans would outdo the Soviets later with the Battle of the Bulge. But the point is what you end up seeing is that, what did the Finns do? Oh, that's right. They had prepared 2 lines, and the front line area, they used the front line area as much as possible to convince the Soviets that was their position. But they had a rear line position that they had also built that they fell back into after or before the artillery barrage began. And so when the Soviets attacked, they bombarded an empty fucking trench. And then by the time the fucking Soviet forces are moving up, they hit the Mannerheim line proper, and they're getting absolutely bushwhacked on the field, because they're like, oh shit, they still have all their artillery, all their machine guns, all their men. it was a killing field. And mind you, the biggest asset that the Ukrainians need right now is manpower, but they don't have it. And this is why they're having such a hell of a time actually holding ground, is because they just don't have the fucking manpower to hold the ground. Like, at the end of the day, drones and artillery are great, but you still need boots to kick the fucking door in and throw the grenade in the trench.
TS fair and back.
So the Ukrainians are outgunned, outmanned.
Yeah, TS Fehrenbach had this saying, a quote, and it was, you can shoot it, you can bomb it, you can hit it with an airplane, you can nuke it from orbit, but you don't own it until you have an 18-year-old kid with a rifle on it.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. And that's the problem for them, is that they just don't have the manpower. So again, you have a position guarded by 100 guys, you drop 10 guys, and you drop 100 rounds on it. Like, 100 artillery rounds is fucking nothing in the grand scheme of things. It is nothing. It is a drop in the bucket of the number of rounds you're going to use in any one engagement. You drop 100 freaking rounds on an objective, kill half of the defenders just with the artillery fire, and then your guys move up with just the monicum of simple assault tactics, concurrent suppressive fire, bounding fire, the use of grenades, and if you're lucky enough to have ISR, and in the case of the Ukrainian war, suicide drones, all of a sudden it creates the crescendo of assault. Like, there is literally no way to defeat that assault if you only have 5 guys that are up and able to fight. And hell, that's if they're all up and ready to fight, because artillery is indiscriminate. Fragmentation doesn't give a fuck. So at the end of the day, it's like, oh, hey, we killed 5 of your buddies and we managed to lodge a chunk of steel in your thigh. You can't walk right now.
Yeah.
You're not dead, but you can't walk. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there fucking screaming for mama because you just took a giant chunk of steel to the thigh.
Yeah. And so all the wounded, the shrapnel, their fighting force. On top of it, you were mentioning the desertions is sort of disintegrating. So what are the Russians going to do now? Are they going to accelerate their advance? Are they going to go all the way to Odessa, you think? What's the final game plan?
Yeah, I suspect that the preparations have already started being made, because they already sealed off the humanitarian corridor, also known as the grain corridor. They've already sealed it off, because the Brits were using the cargo ships that they were using to funnel the grain out of Ukraine. They were using those as motherships for underwater unmanned surface vehicles. That's what they're called. They were using them for as motherships for USVs. So that's the Russians have shut down the grain corridor. They bombed the absolute bejesus out of Odessa. Odessa is not the untouched city that it was previously. So they're definitely going to be moving on Odessa very soon, and I suspect we'll see preparations made for that once we start seeing the fight for Zaporizhia kick off, and then after that we'll see a joint. I think we'll see a two-prong assault, in which you'll have one army group moving for Odessa, another army group moving for Dnipropetrovsk. That's my read on the situation right now, because they're not really wanting to fight in the north, because the North's terrain is not all that great to assault into. It's not that great to assault into whatsoever. So they really don't want to assault there. But the Ukrainians, they've already breached the main defensive lines of Ukraine in the south. So push from the south. It just makes sense.
And okay, so there you have it on the front lines. You gave us an interesting assessment. And in the urban centers, we're seeing this constant barrage. Again, they're after the energy grids. People are freezing in Kiev. what do you think is the final sort of outcome there? Are they going to evacuate the cities and turn them into the capital into a ghost town, and sort of break the the will of resistance in the capital, and then you're going to have chaos? What do you think might happen in Kiev?
Honestly speaking, I can't say for sure. There's a half a dozen possible ways it could go, but it's definitely going to be one of those situations where the government itself is going to bail. There's been so much corruption and so much malfeasance with the aid that's been provided. They're just not going to be able to. They're just not going to be able to stay. So, and then in terms of the civilians, hopefully the civilians don't try to do anything stupid. But unfortunately, there's not much hope for Ukrainians at this point in time. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I gotta go for a split second. I'll be right back.
Yep. Well, for me,
I see.
one of the things I think counterinsurgency actually it can be done a lot easier these days, because I have no doubt that the Russians have been just monitoring all the social media accounts of everyone in Ukraine using AI and basically downloading stuff and using that to build profiles on likely people who are going to be resistors. And they can,
Spyguy, the technical point is getting late on this side of the Atlantic. Are you going to do another next Friday, one of these?
Yeah,
when I'm
that's the intention, is to continue doing these every Friday.
On Fridays?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to wait for Warhound. You think that Poland will make a move into Ukraine, to Western Ukraine at some point?
I think there will be an attempt in not necessarily annex the place into Poland itself, but as a way to we're going to go here so we can get all these Ukrainians back, so they don't eat into Polish resources. But
I fully agree with that. I think it will happen. I don't believe for a second that the Poles will pass up the opportunity.
Yeah,
it's
just
as simple as it is.
Yeah, I guess I agree. In the end, I think it is a bad mistake. We didn't learn this in the 20s and 30s that we don't want to control these people. But my mother said at the start of the war, she's like, Polish people, the Slavs are the most stubborn people on the planet. And I'm like, yeah, you have a son who's one, and you married one, so you would know.
Well put. So, gentlemen, on that note, I'm gonna go hit the sack. It's a little late in Europe. I want to thank you, Spyguy, for this interesting talk, and Warhound. You gave me so many interesting insights, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's all good,
guys,
man. I like talking to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Until next time. Okay. Cheerio. Bye.
Yeah, he and David S. are fun to watch together.
Yeah, no, good dude. I appreciate the talk, especially because he was asking good questions. So
yeah, he is a reporter. And
yes,
and he'll tell you sometimes about his. I think he's retired now, but at one time he used to, when Biden was a senator, he was talking about how he would interview Biden and stuff like that. So Michael gets around a bit.
Nice. But yeah, no, and honestly speaking, you really start thinking about this stuff from the perspective, especially from the perspective that I've started to adopt. And you stop just creating this idea that, only the narratives matter. And it's like, no, reality on the ground is reality.
Yeah.
Give me just a split second again. I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, like you said, reality is we're watching all those women in Milwaukee, and I saw one video. I don't know if it's AI fakery or it was really the wife reacting, but she said something like, "You had real bullets in your guns?" What? Of course they had real bullets in their guns. But a lot of I think we'll close out by finally talking about Minnesota in the end when he comes back.
Yeah, no, sorry about that.
No problem.
And yeah, no, it really is a case of, reality on the ground. Again, Minneapolis, friggin' everybody is sitting there like, this, that, and the other. Like, I can't tell you how many Europeans have been shocked, quote unquote. And I'm like, yeah, just because you allow your leadership to tell you like this is how it works, if you don't like it, then get bent, so on and so forth. It's like, well, guess what? We don't like the idea of being defrauded billions of dollars, and we're going to handle that. Period. In the story.
Yeah.
And it is definitely one of those situations where, reality on the ground. There's billions of dollars in fraud. Yeah. Things are not being done the way they're supposed to be doing. We go in there, and then there's idiots that decide, hippity hoppity, I'm going to get myself shot.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I saw a video of the wife. I think it was on Megyn Kelly, where the wife was reacting to it. It's like, you have real bullets in your guns? Like, what did you think they'd have in there? Water guns?
Yeah. That statement was hilarious. And mind you, there was this narrative that was going around where they were trying to play this idea of, there was. It's a psyop, the chick's alive, blah blah blah, and I'm like, dude, I've seen the pictures of her, or I've seen the videos, I should say. I've seen the videos of her like collapsed over in the driver's seat. Like she's dead, like she's dead. No. You don't look like that unless you are dead. Trust me, I've seen plenty of dead bodies.
I've only seen the one, so. Or technically, I've seen a couple in caskets, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I've seen. I work in security. I work in the public safety realm. Mm-hmm. I've seen some shit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, no, she's dead. And again, you look at the vast majority of the situation, and it's all kayfabe. It's all just, we're angry because you're taking away our illegal money.
Yeah.
And that's all it comes down to. Every bit of it. There's no actual, conscience, oh my God, this is unconscionable that we're doing this to these poor people. No, they don't care about that. They care about the fact that they're losing out on their illegal money.
Right.
So.
And I guess it's hard to say. We haven't really seen anything quite like this. Well, I guess the Summer of Love, but we haven't seen anyone react and put things down quite like this since the LA riots in the 90s. And I do think we might have to do the Insurrection Act on these people, or Trump will have to do the Insurrection Act here. I think that.
Well, so here's the fun part. If somebody laid it out, do you know how the Insurrection Act actually works?
No, I'm not really familiar with it. That.
Okay, so Section 332 of the Insurrection Act lays out that you must issue a proclamation, and then people have 30 days to follow that proclamation. And the proclamation was issued on January 20th, 2025. The proclamation was already issued, because here's the thing, is that literally he issued the proclamation to all the sanctuary states. And he made it very clear, like, no, you guys are doing stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a simple fact that what you end up having in the grander scheme is that he's already issued the proclamation under Section 332. He has even given them 10 months to comply, and they have not complied. And thus, then the Supreme Court passed down their ruling saying you have to use the Insurrection Act here, which, he already issued the proclamation. So that means that the Supreme Court saying, no, this is an Insurrection Act thing, him already having issued the proclamation, he now has legal precedent to go, kick doors and stomp faces.
Yeah. Well, if they're in a state of insurrection, you got to arrest the governor and anyone in the state house that is
Yep.
in open rebellion.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that he's already got every piece in play. What he has been waiting for, and I believe this is the true crux of the situation, is what he's been waiting for is for them to get violent.
Yeah.
Because if they get truly violent, which we've started seeing that in Minneapolis, is once they truly start getting violent, then he's going to move in. And then at that point in time, the moderates, the 50% of the people in the country, are going to then be firmly on his side. At that point in time, he has 70% of the country on his side. Yeah. And I'm gonna refer to some stuff that Ian Burlingame has said previously. The resentfuls want this chaos. The responsibles are the supporters that are like, no, screw this shit, we're done with it. And then the adoptables in the middle, those are the ones that Trump is currently trying to make sure that they are backing him. Yeah. Because if they are backing him, even tangentially, then all of a sudden it creates a much, much better situation for us. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I will say this: I think the last piece is the attempt on federal agents' lives. As we saw this previous week, the FBI got told by the local PD that they had to leave their vehicles unattended because it was a crime scene. And then those vehicles were broken into, and those vehicles possessed personnel files.
Yep.
And so now those personnel files, and mind you, they've already started moving. They've already started relocating the families of the federal agents in question. Now it's just a matter of, okay, go after these people. We dare you. Because once they do, they're dead. It's over.
Yep.
So it's unfortunate, but that's how it has to be handled, because you can't just be like, I tell my one guy, he's very, very, very upset over the handling of Minneapolis so far. He's like, why don't they just go in and handle this? And I'm like, because you can't be a tyrant.
Yeah, you got, and you have to have the sparking incident that you can do that. Or the rest of the country is just going to be like, not respond well.
Yep. And that is the crux of it.
Well, we've been talking for about an hour and 45 minutes here. If you have anything else you want to talk about, or you want to get back to your baby.
Well, I'll just leave it off with with a closing statement. At the end of the day, our world is it's a ball of gum. The 10-year-old kids, they all get together, they all chew gum, they make that giant ball of shit. It's like that. And you have all these different pieces of gum from a bunch of different people that have made this one sickly, just disgusting wad of shit. And that is our world in general, unfortunately, right now. And sadly, what we have had happen within the past decade is the symptoms finally gave way to showing us the actual causes. It's the EU influenced government here in the US. It's the EU itself. It's the machinations of powers above all nations in this world. Like there are entities above every nation in this world that nobody truly understands because of the scope of it. Like, everybody likes to talk about the Rockefellers and the Soroses and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I believe there's people above them. There's people above them that are just so much more powerful. It's unfucking real. And, as I say to people all the time, is that, the people that you're looking for don't have Wikipedia pages.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If they have a Wikipedia page, they're high level management at best.
Mm.
They're not sitting on the table.
Mm.
And, you know, at the end of the day, the table is the true problem. And once we can start identifying these people and we can start hitting them where it truly hurts, we are going to have to continue this fight until as such time as we are capable of striking at them directly. And people need to understand this. People can't just be sitting there and freaking out and abreacting all the time. Because if they continue just abreacting all the fucking time, that gives plenty of space for our enemies to operate.
Mm.
And so, you know, take a knee, pull security. You know, it's definitely a case of like, you need to reevaluate your positions. Nobody has a single fucking clue about everything. Hell, the only reason why I know as much as I do is because I've been fucking knee deep in this shit for 15 fucking years.
Yeah.
Like ever since freaking high school, dude.
Mm.
Like, and it wasn't until I was 22, 23 that I started really truly getting deep in this. And that's 7 years ago. I'm 30 years old. I'm young, but
Yep.
I've been so knee deep in this shit for so long at this point in time. I'm starting to realize shit. And most people are sitting there and they have no fucking clue because they maybe got a year or two into this shit.
Yeah.
At most. And it's like, yeah, dude, like you need to take a knee, pull security, and fucking reevaluate the situation because you have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
You do not understand the scope at all.
Yeah. No, I've been only on this since early COVID when, you know, they locked us down. I was a run-of-the-mill not standard conservative, but like my ex-fiance at the time was to oh, Dave's such a moderate right winger to one of my friends, and she said, no, Dave's really hardcore, and I'm like, she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I just happen to think I think Milton Friedman has the answers or whoever, but no, I know that no one will. I want to get elected, so I can't go around. No one else is there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you ruined I was living my best life in 2020, and then they ruined it for me. And you forced me nothing to do but sit around my house and think for a couple of years. You get me to think, why is this all happening?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is me. I tell people all the time. It's like, you know what? Psychologically speaking, you guys aren't ready for true evil. You're not ready for it whatsoever. I've seen true evil, and it took me a long time to cope with the shit I had seen previously.
Yeah, no,
and even then, I don't think I've truly seen the evil.
Yeah.
Like there's probably some evil ass shit out there that can still fucking get me at times.
Yeah.
I won't try to say that I'm built up and ready to face this shit full bore. But one thing that I will say is that at the end of the day, like, you know, when you're able to sit down and have conversations, you know, it's the pubs, it's the taverns, you know, revolutions are built in taverns.
Right.
And when you're able to sit down and have conversations and actually fucking, you know, game plan and war game all this stuff out, all of a sudden shit starts coming to the forefront. Like, you know, I'll just use an example for you. You know, Mormons. The more I learned about Mormons, the more I started learning about how they conduct themselves and how they do things, and the parasitic nature of their culture.
Mm.
I've gotten to the point where now I'm genocidal towards them.
Okay.
I'll be completely honest. I'm like, no, they must be purged because they are some of the nastiest human beings on the planet. And you know, I'll to the viewers, look into. I'll just use this as an example. Look into what they do with their daughters when their daughters turn 18. You know, they send them out into the world for one purpose and one purpose only: finding another male to bring back to the family to add the genetic diversity, and that's the only purpose their daughters serve.
Oh wow.
That's the only, really, that's their, like, I compare it to Rumspringer with the Amish.
Oh,
I compare it to that, where literally, like, girls are told, go out into the world, find a husband, and bring him back, and bring him into the fold. And then the boys are told, hey, go out into the world, make economic moves. And you notice when Mormon males come into a community, they do one of two things. They either build a colonia, which, you know, they literally develop the area and build out a colony for Mormons in the middle of an area. Like if you look into the demographics of the states of the counties, I should say, the counties of the states that border Utah, you'll start to realize like their Mormon populations have increased steadily over the past few decades. Mm-hmm. But then they'll also go into places, they'll find businesses that they need those businesses in order to do something back in Utah. They'll go in, they'll buy up a business in an area after a while of, you know, working with the business or whatever, and then they'll just take that business and move all of its assets to Utah.
Huh.
And they're purely economically parasitic. Like the Mormons are a bad fucking bunch, dude.
Okay.
And when you start working in that, you start learning these things, and you start realizing these different groups of people have their own motivations and their own things that they're pursuing, then all of a sudden you're just like that. Like then it starts to really click when you're like, okay, if this obscure group of people like the Mormons are doing this shit, what is somebody, you know, that is even more powerful than the Rockefellers or Soros or, you know, X, Y, or Z, you know, what are they doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah. The abyss, I like to make the joke, you know, everybody says don't stare into the abyss too long, for the abyss will stare back. Me, I'm right. Like, I stared at the abyss stared back, and then I was like, hey bitch, I see you.
Yeah.
I know you're there. And then all of a sudden the abyss is just like, wait, he can see me. What the fuck? He's not supposed to be able to see me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, bud.
Yep. That's a good place to kind of leave it out. Look forward to our future conversations. If anyone likes this kind of stuff and you want to see more, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Send this out on your social medias, and let us know how, and come back for more. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.